The basket of laundry thudded onto the table with a careless flick of her wrist. "You like helping, don't you?" My daughter-in-law smirked, eyes flashing with a challenge I hadn't seen before. Still, I didn't blink, just folded, the warmth of the fabric somehow colder than usual. As I pressed the linen flat, a glint of metal caught my eye, her missing keys. While she rambled on, I quietly slid them into my pocket, the weight of them more satisfying than any chore. That's when I realized helping wasn't for her. It was time to take back what was mine. We're about to begin, but if you'd like, share where you're joining from. It reminds me this story doesn't echo into silence. It lands somewhere real. Drop it in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe. I thought I knew how far I'd bend for love. I was wrong. You don't expect to find your life unraveling in the laundry room. It was a Tuesday. I remember because the trash cans were out front. Evan had taken the Honda instead of the truck, and I could still smell the bleach from the towels I folded before dawn, the quiet kind of morning that feels like a held breath. The towels were hotel white, crisp, hot from the dryer, lined up like soldiers on the folding table in our basement. I'd already gone through 2 loads before anyone else woke up. That was my time. No noise. No questions. Just me, my hands, and a sense of order I couldn't seem to find anywhere else. Upstairs, the world was different. Kelly's laughter had started seeping down through the floorboards like perfume, that artificial lilting kind she used when she wanted something. I didn't hate her. Not yet. I think part of me was still trying to like her, or maybe just trying to like the version of myself who said yes to all this. Evan had brought her into the house 6 weeks ago. Not introduced, not explained. Just arrived home with a girl half his age and told me, calmly, like he was reading a weather report, "Kelly's going to stay with us for a while. It'll be good for everyone." Good for who? She moved in that night with a Louis Vuitton duffel and a dog named Oslo that barked at everything but her. The first week, I told myself it was temporary. The second week, I told myself I could be civil. By week 3, I had stopped talking altogether. It wasn't the affair. Not exactly. Evan and I hadn't shared a bed in almost a year. We'd made peace with that kind of distance. Or I had, at least. What gutted me was the way she treated my silence like an invitation, like my stillness meant approval. Kelly played house in my kitchen, rearranged the fridge, tossed out my spices, painted over the pantry door with chalkboard paint so she could write happy quotes on it every morning in her loopy, childish handwriting. Today it said, "Start each day with a grateful heart." I stared at that quote while the dryer buzzed behind me. Maybe I should have said something then. Should have told her to get out of my house, my life, my marriage. But what would it have changed? Evan had already left the conversation months ago, so I folded the towels. I aligned the corners, stacked them by size, and placed them in neat piles, like I used to when the kids were still small and needed me. There was something about the ritual of it, the way cloth yielded to hands, the quiet surrender of heat and steam, that felt almost holy. And then, she came in. Kelly, barefoot, wearing one of my old silk robes, carrying a basket so full of laundry it looked like a prop. "Morning," she said, like we were college roommates. "I hope I'm not interrupting your zen or whatever." She dropped the basket on the couch with a grin that never touched her eyes. I kept folding. "Do you need something?" "Nope," she said brightly. "Just thought you might want to help. These are mostly delicates. You know, silk, lace, a couple of Evans cashmere pieces. I figured you'd know how to handle them. You're kind of good at this stuff." I paused at the word this. The towels, the laundry, the silent obedience. Kelly leaned against the door frame, twirling a strand of hair around her finger. "I mean, You like helping, right? It's kind of your thing. Evan was upstairs. I could hear the muffled clack of his keyboard through the vent. He didn't come down. Didn't call out. I'll be careful, I said finally, my voice so calm it startled me. Wouldn't want to ruin your things. Her smile widened. Perfect. You're the best. She turned and walked out, humming. I looked down at the basket. Silk camisoles, lacy underwear, and a few of Evan's sweaters, the kind I hadn't been allowed to wash in years. My hands moved on their own, sorting, folding, touching fabric that didn't belong to me anymore. Something in me folded too, in that moment. But it didn't break. Not yet. Just because I keep quiet doesn't mean I'm not watching. The house always settles after lunch. That quiet lull when Kelly's off to yoga or planning her latest DIY home office vision board, and Evan retreats into his upstairs cave with headphones and spreadsheets. I like the silence best then. You can hear what isn't being said. I was loading the dryer when something caught the light. Just barely. A glint of brass beneath the unit, wedged where the tile dips unevenly in the back corner. I crouched down, wedging my fingers into the dust and lint buildup. A keyring. Slim, worn, with a small leather tag that read, Office in embossed gold. At first, I just held it in my palm, unmoving. Kelly's keys. I recognized the rabbit foot charm she'd bragged about finding in a vintage shop, and the decorative plastic mini license plate that read, Spoiled, all still attached. The back door slammed. Footsteps. Her voice, rising, frantic, echoed down the hallway. Has anyone seen my keys? I slid the ring into the deep pocket of my cardigan before I stood up. The dryer buzzed like it always did, loud and predictable. She swept into the kitchen just as I reached the stairs, her energy filling the space like a blown fuse. They were right here this morning, she said, flinging open drawers, knocking over a jar of protein powder. Seriously, I just had them. From the living room, Evan didn't look up from his laptop. You probably misplaced them again. Her head whipped toward him. I don't lose things, Evan. He didn't answer. I lingered in the doorway just long enough to be noticed. I can help you look later, I said evenly. Maybe retrace your steps? Kelly blinked at me like I'd spoken a foreign language. Sure, yeah. Thanks. She turned away before the last word even landed. I went upstairs without another word, heart ticking like a clock wound too tight. That night, when the lights were out and the dog had curled himself into Kelly's silk pajama leg on the couch, I crept into the guest room and locked the door behind me. I laid the keys on the bedspread. 5 total. One with a bright blue cover, likely for her gym locker. Another, thin, gold, probably for her luggage padlock. But the thick silver one with the black plastic grip? That was the one labeled Office. And it matched the lock on her beige filing cabinet downstairs. The one she had wheeled in 2 weeks ago and parked beside her desk like it belonged. She never let it out of her sight. I held the key in my fingers, turning it over, imagining the click it would make. The sound of a line being crossed. The next morning, I took tea with Ruth on her porch. We'd made it a Sunday ritual ever since her husband died. 2 women with too much silence at home, filling the gaps with Earl Grey and guarded conversation. She was stirring honey into her cup when I finally said it. I found Kelly's keys. Ruth's spoon stopped moving. She waited, wisely, without speaking. One of them opens her cabinet, I added. In the office? I haven't used it. Not yet. Her brow furrowed just slightly. What are you thinking? I sipped my tea, staring out past her hedges to the quiet street. That I'm helping, I said, my voice calm. The way she asked me to. Ruth looked at me for a long time. Be careful, Diane. I smiled faintly. I always am. Back home, I passed the office on my way upstairs. Kelly wasn't in it. She was out on the deck with a margarita, texting someone furiously, sunglasses perched high on her head like a tiara. The cabinet sat quietly beside her desk, locked tight. Unassuming. Innocent. But something had changed in me. Folding her laundry was one kind of surrender. This was different. Because the key was mine now, and so was the choice. Every secret has a scent. Hers smelled like lavender and greed. The house was quiet again, the kind of quiet that hums. Oslo's nails clicked faintly on the hardwood, then faded as he curled under the kitchen table. Kelly's convertible had pulled out an hour ago, music thumping, perfume trailing. "Quick shopping trip," she'd called over her shoulder. I'd smiled from the sink, hands wet, pretending not to care. But I'd been waiting for this kind of quiet. I moved through the house slowly, as if the air itself could wake her. Every step, deliberate, every breath, measured. The office door was ajar, the scent of her candle, some blend of sandalwood and vanilla, clinging to the room. I stood at the threshold for a long time, feeling the pulse in my throat. The beige filing cabinet sat where it always did, squat and smug beside the desk. I knelt, slid the key into the lock, and turned it. The click was softer than I expected. Inside, the drawers smelled of fresh paper and money. I started at the top, bank statements first, glossy envelopes stamped from Evan's bank. I spread them across the desk, the columns neat and cruel. Spa visits, salon packages, designer purchases, all paid from the same joint account Evan and I had opened 21 years ago. Her name on every withdrawal, his signature on every approval. There were spa invoices from Miami, a membership to some private wellness retreat in Sedona, and an airline charge for a first-class ticket. 2 months before she moved in. Evan had sworn he was in Denver for a conference that week. My fingers shook only once. Then I kept going. The next drawer was labeled legal, folders in tidy rows. I pulled one halfway, enough to read the tab. Inheritance transfer. Pending. The paper inside was heavy stock, the kind lawyers use when they want something to look permanent. I scanned the first paragraph. My name jumped out, Diane F. Alcott, co-beneficiary of the Alcott Family Trust. Below it, Kelly R. Whitman, designated transferee. I didn't understand at first. Then I saw the note clipped to the back. Handwritten, casual, arrogant. Once Evan signs, assets roll into joint control. No obstacles expected. Evan's initials sat at the corner of the page. The air in the room shifted. I felt it in my spine. It wasn't just the money, it was the rewrite. She was erasing me from the story, one signature at a time. The phone rang, slicing through the stillness. I nearly dropped the file. Ruth's voice came through, low and steady. "I made that lemon loaf you like. Come by if you need a reason to leave the house." I must have sounded strange when I answered because she hesitated. "Diane? You all right?" I closed the drawer, locked it again, and slipped the key back into my pocket. "I'm fine. Just cleaning." There was a pause. "You found something, didn't you?" The question hung there. I didn't answer. When I got to her porch, the world smelled like rain. Ruth poured tea without asking. We sat, the silence between us thick. Finally, I slid one page across the table. Just the cover sheet with Kelly's signature, and that single, damning line, inheritance transfer. Pending. Ruth's eyes widened. "She's not just disrespectful, Diane. She's dangerous." Her words landed with a weight I'd been avoiding. Dangerous. I'd been folding this woman's lingerie, cleaning her lipstick off my husband's glasses, and now, she was after the last piece of me that still existed in writing. I folded the paper back into my purse. Then she picked the wrong laundress to underestimate. Ruth said nothing, but I saw it in her face. A flicker of something like fear, or maybe awe. Back home, the house was still empty, but it felt different now. The air was charged. The kind of quiet that comes before lightning. I ran my hand over the cabinet one more time before locking the door behind me. There are stains that bleach can't touch, and some of them start with ink. There's a difference between revenge and correction. I was learning the weight of both. The next morning, I woke before the sun, the kind of gray dawn that feels like confession. The house was still asleep, except for Oslo snoring at the foot of the stairs. Kelly's purse hung from the coat rack, all crocodile leather and vanity, but she was upstairs in Evan's room now. I didn't look toward the closed door as I passed. I drove to the city with the papers folded neatly inside a manila envelope on the passenger seat, their edges biting through like truth waiting to cut. Mark Doyle's office hadn't changed much since my husband's funeral. The same dark walnut shelves, the same faint smell of coffee and lemon polish, and Mark himself, still heavyset, kind-eyed, with a tie that looked like it had been knotted in a rush. He stood when I entered, his face breaking into recognition. "Diane?" he said softly. "It's been a while. I wish it were for better reasons." He gestured toward the chair across from his desk. "Let's see what you've got." I slid the folder across to him. The manila caught on a ring binder as if resisting, but he pulled it open carefully. The papers whispered between us. As he read, I watched the small movements of his expression. Surprise, then focus, then something darker. Finally, he sat back. "Where did you get these?" "Her cabinet," I said plainly. "Kelly keeps a filing system. It's efficient." Mark exhaled. "She's not trying to access your trust directly. She's setting up a transfer through your son, using him as a proxy. Once he signs those authorizations, she gets power of attorney over his holdings, and by extension, your late husband's portion." The words settled like ash. "Through my son?" He nodded slowly. "She's convincing Evan this is some kind of financial streamlining, merging the family assets for easier access. He might even believe it's a tax optimization. She's clever, using his guilt as leverage." I stared at the papers again, the ink now more alive than it had been on Kelly's desk. "Can we stop it?" "Yes," he said. "We can reverse the documentation, nullify the transfer, but—" He hesitated, then leaned forward. "If we want her to show her hand, it might be wiser to let her think she's won first." The idea was sharp, dangerous, thrilling. "You mean, let her sign?" "Let her celebrate," Mark said. "She'll gloat, overreach. When she believes she's succeeded, we file the injunction. The reversal will take minutes, but the fallout—" He met my eyes. "That will be poetic." I hadn't smiled in months, but it came then. Small at first, then full. "Let's make her celebrate before she falls." Mark's answering nod was slow and certain. "I'll start the paperwork. Keep those originals hidden. And Diane? Be careful. People like her don't play fair when they realize the game's turning." I left his office lighter than I'd arrived, though the weight of the plan pressed warm against my chest. The city outside was wet from an early rain, cars hissing through puddles, a faint smell of exhaust and possibility. I stopped by a print shop 2 blocks away, made 2 copies of the documents, and sealed them in separate envelopes, one for Mark, one for me. Then I drove home, the envelope on the seat beside me like a living thing. When I pulled into the driveway, Kelly's car was back. Her laughter carried through the open window. She was on the phone, giddy, bragging about some boutique she'd taken over. She didn't even glance up when I walked past the porch. Inside, I slid the manila folder behind the false panel in the laundry room wall, the one Evan never noticed because he never looked closely at anything anymore. Then I stood in the doorway, listening to her voice upstairs, bright and sure of itself. For the first time, I wasn't angry. I was steady. Because now, she wasn't the only one holding keys. And I knew exactly which locks to turn next. Power doesn't always change hands. Sometimes it only pretends to. The first clue came in the form of laughter. Kelly's, high, bright, and rehearsed, spilling from Evan's office just as I walked past with a basket of towels. It was late afternoon, sunlight slanting through the hallway in long amber bars. I paused, quiet as breath, and listened. "You're doing the right thing," she said. "Once the transfer finalizes, you won't need to ask your mom for approval on every little expense. It's freedom, Evan. Financial adulthood." Her tone was honey poured over glass. I could hear the rustle of papers, the quick shuffle of a pen sliding across a desk. Evan's voice came low, uncertain. I don't want her to feel blindsided." Kelly laughed, that sharp, hollow kind. "She'll be thrilled, trust me. It takes responsibility off her plate. You're helping her, really." A pause. Then the scratch of ink on paper. I stood there for a heartbeat longer, towel clutched so tight my knuckles whitened. Then I walked on, each step deliberate. No noise, no confrontation. Not yet. In the laundry room, I picked up the phone and called Mark. "It's happening," I said. "He's signing." "I figured she'd push fast," he replied. I could hear papers rustling on his end, the sound of quiet efficiency. "Don't worry, the revocation's already filed with the registrar. Legally, whatever they're signing right now is nothing but confetti." I smiled at that, not out of joy, but precision. Confetti sounds right. Still, part of me hurt. The part that remembered teaching Evan how to hold a pencil, how to sign his name for the first time on a birthday card to his grandmother. Now he was signing me away, one page at a time. Even if the ink didn't count, the betrayal did. That night, Kelly insisted on dinner to celebrate. She'd set the table herself. Candles, linen napkins, the good stemware I hadn't used since before she arrived. Evan sat across from me, his smile tight, eyes darting between us. Kelly, radiant in red, twirled her wineglass like it was a trophy. "To progress," she declared, raising her glass high. "To finally putting old systems to bed. Clean slates all around." Her phrasing was deliberate. I could almost admire it, the way she performed triumph. I raised my glass slowly, meeting her eyes across the table. "To patience," I said. "It always pays off." For a flicker of a second, she looked unsure. A tiny tremor of confusion before her smile snapped back in place. She clinked her glass against mine, laughing. "Cheers to that." Evan exhaled as if relieved the toast had gone smoothly. He didn't see the way I never actually drank. We ate in the kind of silence that hums under tension. Kelly talked about renovations, how she wanted to turn the guest room into a meditation suite. Evan nodded vaguely, chewing without appetite. Every time her hand brushed his, he flinched. Subtly, but I caught it. Guilt makes people clumsy. I watched her. Not out of hatred now, but study. The way she believed control was a performance, that confidence could rewrite truth. She still didn't know her victory was hollow, filed dead on arrival in a downtown courthouse before she'd even printed the signature pages. Mark had texted earlier. Filed. Confirmed. Let her toast. And so I did. After dinner, she leaned back, flushed and glowing. "You'll see. Diane," she said sweetly, "this new arrangement, it'll take so much pressure off you. You can finally relax." I smiled, folding my napkin neatly on my lap. "Oh, I already have." She laughed, missing it entirely, and reached for more wine. Evan started clearing the plates, his eyes not quite meeting mine. There was shame in the way he stacked them. Careful, fragile, like he knew something he couldn't fix. When they finally went upstairs, I stayed at the table, letting the candle burn down to its wick. The document sat in my mind like a loaded chamber. Silent, legal, absolute. Kelly thought she'd rewritten my story tonight, but all she'd done was sign the preface to her own ending, and the ink was still drying. It wasn't revenge I wanted. It was clarity, and maybe a little smoke around the edges. The days that followed moved like honey over heat. Slow, thick, dangerous if left unattended. Kelly strutted through the house as if her name were already etched into the deed, oblivious to the paperwork stacked quietly against her in manila folders and hidden drives. I stayed in the background, not passive, practiced, cooking her favorite meals, folding her delicate laundry with precision, smiling at the right moments. I played the part so well even Evan started thanking me again. Small, muttered words over coffee, eyes low. Guilt softens people, if you let it sit long enough. Each time she left for yoga, or a strategy brunch, or a boutique pop-up event that was really just another way to spend Evan's retirement fund, I moved. Fast, but careful. The filing cabinet had nothing new. She'd already boxed up most of the useful paper trails. But I had learned to follow the scent digitally. Her tablet, always charging in the kitchen drawer, had no passcode. She didn't need one. She thought she'd already won. By Wednesday, I had a folder on my desktop marked K receipts. Inside, PDF invoices, bank statements, private Venmo logs. Money bleeding in all directions. Skin treatments in Beverly Hills. $900 shoes she returned and reordered twice for influencer unboxing content. Cryptic payments labeled consultation fee, LL. The most damning document was buried in an email attachment she'd never deleted. A scanned loan agreement. I clicked it open. Heart steady. Borrower, Kelly R. Whitman. Collateral, 1124 Ravendale Drive. Primary owner, Evan R. Alcott. My throat tightened. That was our house. The one Evan and I bought in '98 with a 20-year fixed, back when interest rates made or broke dreams. She'd leveraged it for $180,000 to launch her brand. I stared at the signature line, waiting for it to change. It didn't. Evan had signed it 3 weeks ago. She's betting everything she doesn't own, I whispered, barely hearing myself. Later that afternoon, I sat across from Ruth on her porch again, the sun low and golden between us, the kind that softens even the hardest truths. She poured the tea without asking. It had become our ritual. No questions until I started. She used the house, I said, took out a loan against it with Evan's signature. If she defaults, we lose everything. Ruth didn't flinch. Does he know what he signed? No, I said. He thinks he's investing in her. He doesn't realize he handed her the title and the matchbook. Ruth stirred her tea slowly. You're living in a lion's den. I didn't blink. Yes, but I'm the one holding the chair. The quiet settled between us like a pact. I slid another printout across the table. Loan terms, lender info, Kelly's signature. A little more aggressive this time, like she was already sure she'd never be held accountable. She's buying a life with money that doesn't belong to her. One false step, one missed payment, and the house defaults to the lender. Ruth's fingers tapped the edge of the page. And you're about to collect. I didn't answer, but the smile that touched my mouth wasn't soft. That night, Kelly came home giddy, swinging a branded tote full of silk samples and champagne splits. She kissed Evan on the cheek, called him her rock, then disappeared upstairs humming some off-key melody like she was already rich. I stood at the sink, rinsing the same wine glass 3 times. It wasn't just the money she was after. It was the rewrite of who Evan was, of who I had been in this house. And she was funding it with the future. But I had the ledger now. and debts always come due. Truth doesn't always win. Sometimes it just waits for its turn. I waited until the house was quiet, not the false quiet of everyone home and ignoring each other, but the real kind. Kelly had taken Oslo to the groomer and then to a brand meeting that involved champagne and someone's rooftop. I knew the pattern now. She'd be gone for hours. Evan was in the den, half watching the news, the remote still in his hand, though the volume was muted. I stood in the doorway and let him feel me there. "Do you have a minute?" I asked. He turned, startled, then nodded. "Of course." I sat across from him on the edge of the ottoman, a manila folder in my hands. I didn't hand it to him yet. "Did you know your wife put the house up for a loan?" I asked softly. His brow furrowed. "What?" "No, that's not right." I opened the folder and laid the documents in front of him, one by one. The loan agreement, the collateral clause, his signature, right there in blue ink. Kelly's, too. He didn't touch them, just stared. "She said it was a tax form," he whispered after a beat. "Something the accountant needed. She told me to sign and send it back the same day. I didn't even read it." My mouth stayed still. I'd expected that answer, but hearing it didn't dull the weight of it. "She used you," I said. "Used your name, your trust. And now she owns your future. Or at least, she thinks she does." Evan leaned back like the couch had betrayed him too. "It can't be that bad. She borrowed $180,000 against the title. If she defaults, the house is gone. Our house, Evan." He looked up at me then, not angry, not defensive, just broken in a way I hadn't seen since his father died. I didn't know. I studied him. The same hands I used to guide with mine when he learned to walk now sat idle in his lap, knuckles whitening. I wanted to scream at him. I wanted to tell him to wake up. But instead I asked, "Do you believe me now?" He nodded slowly, but not like someone accepting truth. More like someone surrendering to inevitability. "Son," I said, quiet but firm. "You can live with lies or live with truth. Pick before it costs you everything." The silence that followed wasn't just his, it was ours. The kind that stretches years and disappointments deep. But he didn't speak. And in that silence, I understood. He wasn't ready. Not yet. Still wrapped in whatever spell Kelly had woven. He might have seen the cracks now, but he was still afraid to call them collapse. I stood, gathering the papers without rush. "You know where to find me when you're ready to pick a side." I left the room with the folder pressed close to my chest, the ache sharper than I'd prepared for. I'd raised that boy to think for himself. And somehow, that had turned into letting others do the thinking for him. But I couldn't wait on him anymore. Not for strength, not for loyalty. This house, this life, they weren't going to be saved by his change of heart. They'd be saved by my next move. That night, I emailed Mark. Subject line, next step. Attachment. The loan doc, full scans, lender contact info, Kelly's signature. I copied Ruth. Then I went to the kitchen and set the kettle on the stove, letting the whistle build slowly. Upstairs, I heard Kelly's voice, cheerful, planning some spa opening on the phone, calling Evan sweetheart like she hadn't nearly signed his ruin. I poured the tea, steady-handed, let them keep thinking I was folding towels and simmering broth. The real work was already unfolding. Quiet, legal, irreversible. And next time I handed someone a document in this house, it wouldn't be for their approval. It would be their notice. Power shifts quietly, sometimes in the turn of a key, sometimes in the words you give back. It was the third time Kelly had turned the kitchen drawers inside out. Forks clattered, spices spun, the junk drawer got dumped, again. "I swear I put them right here," she said to no one in particular, standing barefoot on the tile like she was the patron saint of minor inconveniences. They were on this little dish. I always put them on the dish. Oslo watched her from the corner, head tilted, tail thumping once. Like even he was tired of the performance. I'll just order new ones, she huffed eventually, tossing her phone onto the counter with a dramatic sigh. Not like it matters. I've got the cabinet files backed up. Still, it's so annoying. I kept folding napkins at the table. I didn't look up. She didn't know I used those keys almost every night. Never long, just long enough to gather what I needed. Quiet footsteps, gloved fingers, flash drive in, flash drive out. I had everything now. Emails, contracts, digital signatures, a private message thread between her and a lender's assistant named Chris, who called her Kel, and used way too many winking emojis for a professional man. I waited a full week after her outburst, long enough for the replacements to arrive. I even watched her open the padded envelope and say, "Finally," like the universe owed her timely service. That evening, after dinner, I placed the originals on the kitchen counter, right in the center. Not dramatic, not hidden, just returned. She came in humming, wine glass in hand, and froze when she saw them. "My keys," she said, blinking. "Where did you find them?" "In the laundry room," I said, rinsing a pan. "Back corner behind the dryer. Must have slipped off the folding table." Her laugh was short and a little high. "Oh God, I looked back there. I swear I did." I nodded. Sometimes things hide in plain sight. Kelly scooped up the keys, checking each one like they might have grown legs in her absence. "You should have told me sooner." I turned, dried my hands, and gave her a small smile. "You like helping, don't you?" Her face shifted. Just a flicker. A flash of something behind the eyes. It wasn't quite fear. Not yet. More like recognition. She stared at me, unsure whether it had been sarcasm, a callback, or a challenge. Maybe all three. I didn't give her an answer. I didn't need to. The next morning, I brought lemon bars to Ruth's. Real ones. Not the boxed kind Kelly used to bake and photograph like a lifestyle blogger. We sat on her porch again, the breeze cool against the last hints of summer. "She's got the keys back," I said, breaking the silence. "Same ring, same charm, just heavier now." Ruth looked amused. "Did she say thank you?" "She tried to make it my fault. Said I should have told her sooner." Ruth sipped her tea. "And what did you say?" I asked if she liked helping. I looked out toward the street. Just like she asked me. A slow smile crept across Ruth's face. "That line's gonna sting when she realizes what you've done." I nodded. "Good. I want her to feel it. Later. Not now. Not yet. Right now. She needs to believe the story she's written is still playing out." Ruth leaned back in her chair. "You're not just cleaning house, Diane. You're rewriting the whole blueprint." "No," I said, almost to myself. "I'm just restoring the original floor plan." That night, Kelly didn't mention the keys again. She twirled them around her finger like everything was fine, like no doors had been opened in her absence. But I watched her closer than before, because she had her ring back. And I was waiting to see which lock she tried first. The one that opened something she owned. Or the one that opened what she thought she'd taken. The foundation didn't crack. It vanished. The call came mid-morning, just as Kelly was standing over the sink in silk pajamas, blending a collagen smoothie with the kind of energy reserved for women who think noise equals productivity. Her phone buzzed, and I heard her groan before she picked it up. "Yes, this is Kelly Miller," she said, impatient, with the flat tone she reserved for people she believed were beneath her. "Can you hold on? I'm walking into better reception." She didn't go far, just stepped onto the back deck and slid the door shut behind her. She thought I couldn't hear. But this house carries sound like secrets. What do you mean rejected? That's not possible. Silence. Then sharper. Well, check again. The authorization was signed. I have the... No, I don't need to speak to legal. I need to speak to someone who knows what they're doing. More silence. Then a long pause. She ended the call without saying goodbye. Just stood there for a full 10 seconds, frozen, fingers still curled around her phone like it might bite her. When she came back in, her face was tight, controlled. But the panic had cracked through at the edges, the kind you can't Botox away. She didn't see me watching from the hallway. She paced for the next hour, made 3 more calls, all with the same cadence, rising, clipped, increasingly desperate. Words like accounts, restructure, revoked, and finally, fraud, floated through the air like smoke from a slow fire. Upstairs, Evan emerged, blinking into the tension like he'd overslept through a tornado. His shirt was half-buttoned. "Everything okay?" he asked. Kelly whipped toward him. "No. No, Evan. Everything is not okay. The trust transfer? The one I told you was almost done? It got flagged. Rejected." He frowned. "Why?" "Because someone filed a reversal. Some legal block is on every document. The whole thing's frozen. My accounts are frozen, Evan." He looked dazed. "Wait. What do you mean, your accounts?" Kelly's voice cracked. "I mean your mother's trying to make me look like a thief." I stepped into the room then, slow, measured. "Funny," I said. "I've just been folding your laundry." Kelly turned like she'd been struck, eyes wide. You think I don't see what this is? You've been manipulating him from the start. You're playing some twisted game." "I'm not the one who took out a loan on a house I didn't own," I said. "I'm not the one who forged a signature and got caught." Evan didn't move, just stared at her. Really stared. "You told me it was a tax form," he said, his voice low. "I was protecting you," she yelled. "You never take initiative, Evan. You let her make every decision, and I thought if I..." "Lied?" he asked. Kelly's jaw clenched. She turned on me again. "You don't even want the money. You're just bitter, spiteful. You'd rather burn this house down than let anyone else have a room in it." I stepped forward, calm. "I wanted to believe you were just selfish, but now I know better. You're reckless." She slapped the edge of the kitchen table hard. The sound ricocheted through the room like a gunshot. Then, without a word, she grabbed her purse and stormed out the back door. The silence she left behind was jagged. Evan stood in it like a man trying to balance on a fault line. "She's right about one thing," he said finally, without looking at me. "You are always 5 steps ahead." I held his gaze. "And you're still standing behind her?" He didn't answer, but something flickered in his face. Something that hadn't been there before. Not certainty, not anger, not love. Clarity. Like he'd just stepped out of the fog and wasn't sure what he'd walked into. I didn't press him. I just walked past him, slow and steady, because clarity was enough for now. It was the first sign that the house, my house, was starting to shift back. And she wasn't going to be able to stop it. You don't always have to scream to make someone hear you. Sometimes silence delivers the message better. I sent the email on a Thursday. No salutation, no explanation, just a subject line. Supporting documentation, loan, year 84739. And 6 clean attachments. Scans of the fake budget projections. The forged cosigner approval. The time-stamped messages between Kelly and the lender's assistant. Her emoji-laced promises to liquidate from family equity. Within 48 hours, the calls started. At first, she answered them with the confidence of someone used to bending systems. "This must be a mistake. My husband will call you back." We're in the middle of restructuring. But banks don't care about performance. They care about numbers. And Kelly's didn't add up. By day 5, the voicemails came faster than she could delete them. By day 6, she was leaving her phone face down on the counter, muttering things like, "It's harassment, honestly," and "They don't understand who they're dealing with." I never asked what they said. I didn't need to. The house had begun to take on a different tone, the kind that creeps in after you've removed the insulation, raw, echoing, vulnerable. She stopped sleeping in late, stopped ordering sushi for lunch. Her friend group, the loud, wine-sipping tribe she'd spent months flaunting on our porch, stopped coming over altogether. Someone had leaked screenshots of her purchases to a neighborhood group thread. Something about a vanity loan, reckless collateral, and a fundraiser gala where she used donor money to cover her new teeth. She said it was a smear campaign from jealous women. She said it 3 times in a single afternoon. By the end of the week, she wasn't saying much at all. I stopped folding towels, stopped washing the wine glasses she left in the sink, stopped pretending that this house still required my upkeep. Kelly noticed. She didn't comment directly, but her posture changed. She hovered more, asked pointed questions like, "Did you already take care of the grocery list?" I shrugged. Didn't seem like my place. When she asked if I could help clean out the guest room closet, I looked her dead in the eye and said, "Helping time's over." That was the first time she blinked before answering. On Sunday, I wheeled my last suitcase out to the driveway. No ceremony. No goodbye party. Just 3 neat bags packed with everything I came into this house with, plus 1 flash drive and a folder of signed affidavits. Evan stood in the doorway, arms folded. "You're leaving," he said. It wasn't a question. I zipped my coat. "The work's done." He didn't try to stop me, just shifted his weight like he wanted to say something but couldn't find the shape of it. "I didn't expect you to save me," he said quietly. "But I didn't expect you to walk out either." I turned to face him. "You wanted both. But you can't have both." A long silence stretched between us. Finally, he nodded. "Where will you go?" "Someplace quiet," I said. "Someplace where towels fold themselves and no one calls that helping." He gave the barest smile. "She'll say you abandoned us. She'll say a lot of things." I looked him square in the face. "But this time, Evan, you'll know better." Behind him, the house loomed. No longer mine, but not hers either. A structure filled with echoes, waiting to choose a side. I slid into my car, closed the door, and turned the ignition. In the rearview mirror, Evan stood alone on the porch, hands in his pockets. A man just beginning to realize that clarity comes with consequences. As I pulled away, the first of the foreclosure notices arrived, stuffed into the mailbox registered urgent. And for the first time in months, I didn't flinch. Because the fire she started was finally at her own doorstep. And I wasn't the one holding the match. Sometimes justice doesn't roar. It publishes quietly at the bottom of page 2 and changes everything. By Tuesday, Kelly had started selling things. It began with her jewelry. A pair of emerald earrings she once claimed were family heirlooms, but still had the Nordstrom tag tucked in the travel pouch. Then a gold cuff, 2 designer handbags, and finally, the diamond tennis bracelet Evan gave her last Christmas. That one went with a little more hesitation. She listed everything under a fake name on Facebook Marketplace, Celia R. But Ruth sent me screenshots anyway. "She's unraveling," she said over the phone, voice calm but pointed, like someone trying to paddle a leaking boat with a silver spoon. I was already filling out the paperwork, and I'm not done yet. Mark and I had met that morning at his office, the second time in 3 weeks. He wore the same tired suit, and I brought fresh coffee. This time, we didn't dance around the details. I slid the final folder across the desk. I want her name stripped from every contingent clause, every passive beneficiary note, I said. She never legally belonged to this family. Let's make sure the trust reflects that. Mark nodded. It's your right. After what she tried to pull, I'd say it's your duty. I'm not doing it out of spite, I said. I'm doing it for Henry. Henry, my late husband, would have hated what the house had become. The version of himself she tried to rewrite, the family she tried to claim like a brand acquisition. Mark tapped his pen thoughtfully. You know what you could do with the unassigned equity once she's out? I looked at him. Tell me. By Thursday, it was public. Not loud, not flashy. Just a clean write-up in the Ravendale Herald and a small feature in the Mid-County Weekly. Miller Family Foundation established by Diane Miller. Funding scholarships for women returning to school after loss or divorce. Dedicated in honor of Henry R. Miller, veteran and educator. I didn't even have to send Kelly the article. The algorithm did it for me. She saw it at 2:11 p.m. I know that because Ruth texted me a photo from across the cafe. Kelly had been sitting alone, scrolling, her latte barely touched. Ruth watched her click the link, pause, then click again. She said Kelly's hands trembled, just for a second, before she stood up and knocked her chair back so hard it scraped the floor. She left the drink, left the tip, left the receipt. Gone in under 10 seconds. That evening, my phone rang. Unfamiliar number. I didn't answer. Then a text. You're going to regret this. No name. No signature. Just the bravado of someone watching the last rope slip through her fingers. I didn't respond. Instead, I forwarded the message to Mark and attached a screenshot of the article. He replied with 3 words. Paper trail started. At home, Ruth lit candles while we sat on her porch, sipping tea with lemon and bourbon. You've done it, she said. She can't touch the house. Can't touch the trust. You've even taken back the name. I didn't smile. Not fully. But I felt the release of it, somewhere deep in the ribs. She thought if she wore it long enough, it became hers, I said. But names don't belong to people. They belong to legacies. Ruth lifted her glass. To legacies, then. We clinked gently. Across town. Kelly was ripping open mail. 2 overdraft notices, 1 declined business card, 1 legal summary confirming she was no longer associated with the Miller Family Trust, effective immediately, and a printed copy of the newspaper article, folded neatly and slid under the door by someone who knew exactly what they were doing. She stood in the center of her rented staging studio, surrounded by half-unpaid vendors and her vision board peeling at the corners, and for the first time, the word irrelevant landed like a bruise. She hadn't lost everything. Not yet. But now she knew who had taken it back, and whose name would be remembered. Sometimes a clean break doesn't come with a scream. Just a suitcase and a quiet knock. It was raining, the kind of cold, steady rain that taps like it's counting down. Ruth was slicing ginger in my kitchen, humming to the radio. The windows fogged. I didn't say much, just watched the kettle start to tremble on the stove. Then the knock came. Not loud, but certain. I wiped my hands on a dish towel and opened the door. Evan stood there, soaked to the shoulders, with Liam asleep on his hip and 2 overstuffed suitcases at his feet. He didn't say anything at first. His face was pale, mouth set, eyes rimmed red. Not from tears, from whatever came after. The kind of tired that goes bone deep. Can we stay a few nights? He finally asked. I opened the door wider. Of course, I like helping. From the kitchen, Ruth let out a laugh so loud it bounced off the living room walls. Evan didn't laugh. He looked like someone who'd just stepped out of a collapsed house and wasn't sure where to stand now. I took Liam gently and led them both inside. Ruth grabbed blankets without asking. She always knew when not to talk. Later, when the boy was asleep on the couch under 3 layers of fleece, Evan sat across from me at the kitchen table, his hands wrapped around a mug he didn't drink from. "I told her I wanted out," he said. "She asked if I was going to be just like you." I didn't answer that. He shook his head. "She lied to me, Mom. About everything. The money, the loan, the scholarship story going public. She said it was a coincidence. Claimed you forged the documents just to make her look bad." "And did you believe her?" I asked. "I wanted to," he admitted. "But then I saw the vendor emails. One of them sent me screenshots. She was promising fund disbursements off a trust that doesn't even have her name on it anymore." He rubbed the back of his neck. "When I confronted her, she cried. That soft cry she does when she wants you to feel like the villain. Then she asked if we could just reset everything. Like this was a bad marketing launch instead of a marriage." "What did you say?" "I didn't," he said. "I packed Liam's bag. Told her I'd send for the rest." He looked around my kitchen then. Small, simple, home. His eyes landed on the folded napkins on the table. The way everything still smelled faintly like lemon oil and cinnamon. "She said I'd never survive without her." "She says a lot of things," I said, echoing myself from the week before. "She said you'd use this moment to gloat." I reached across and placed my hand over his. Not triumphant, not forgiving. Just there. Solid. "I'm tired of gloating," I said. "It's heavier than it looks." His shoulders dropped. That's when I saw it. The moment he let go. Not of her. Of shame. We didn't talk about the past after that. Not the marriage. Not the trust. Not the months she spent playing house in someone else's kitchen. We just made grilled cheese for Liam when he woke up. Ruth taught him how to slice strawberries without squishing them. Evan made tea and didn't forget the honey this time. It wasn't a victory parade. It was a beginning. And it was enough. Across town, Kelly sat in the dim light of her rented office, the brand posters curling off the walls, the phone silent, the inbox full of past due notifications. She scrolled one more time. Diane Miller's foundation. Her picture beside Henry's in the press release. The word legacy bolded in the subhead. She screamed then. Not the kind of scream that frightens, but the kind that echoes back at you. No one came. Not even Oslo. There's nothing louder than the sound of a door you'll never open again. She showed up at 4:12 p.m., unannounced, uninvited, and unraveling. The knock this time wasn't gentle. It was sharp, staccato, a demand dressed as desperation. I opened the front door to find Kelly on the porch in a trench coat she hadn't steamed properly. Mascara smudged in that way, only panic can apply. "You have my keys," she said before I could speak. She didn't ask. She declared. Behind her, the street was quiet. Just the wind, a grocery bag skittering across the pavement like it was trying to get away from her too. I stepped back. "Come in." She stomped past me without looking around, like the walls might judge her. She didn't sit, didn't take off her coat. Just stood in the center of my living room, fists clenched like someone still clinging to the idea that fury equals ownership. "You went too far," she said. "You humiliated me. You destroyed my business, my relationships, my reputation." "I didn't need to destroy anything," I replied. "You did that on your own. I just turned the lights on." Her jaw trembled, but she pushed past it. "Give me my keys." I walked to the hallway drawer, opened it, took out the ring. The same one she'd dropped months ago, tossed without thought between detergent and softener, like it wasn't a set of doors, documents, and consequences. I held it up. 5 keys. But she counted them immediately. Her eyes narrowed. "Where's the main key?" I looked at her, no longer like an adversary. just a woman who'd finally run out of places to hide. In the safe, I said, where it belongs, along with the deed that no longer has your name. Her face paled. That's not possible. You forged your way in, Kelly. I just made sure the lock worked both directions. You stole everything, she snapped. Her voice cracked at the edges, no longer polished, no longer performed, just raw. You didn't win, Diane. You cheated. I stepped forward, calmly placing the ring in her palm. No, I simply reclaimed what you tossed in the laundry. She stared at the keys like they'd burned her. Evan will regret this, she whispered, but even she didn't sound convinced. Maybe, I said. But at least now he'll regret it with both eyes open. She looked around once more. The walls, the pictures, the clean lines of a home that had rejected her like a body rejecting a virus. Then she screamed. Not a word, just a shriek. Sharp, splintering, empty. It filled the house and bounced back to her, shriller by the second. I didn't flinch. She spun around and stormed out, nearly slipping on the wet step but catching herself on the rail. And just like that, she was gone, trench coat billowing behind her like a curtain yanked shut. I closed the door gently, no slamming, no final word. Just a click, metal meeting metal, the clean seal of something finished. I stood there, my hand still on the knob, and let the silence settle. Not the tense kind, not the waiting kind. The kind that meant peace had finally walked in and found a seat. From the kitchen, Ruth called out without looking up from her crossword. Was that the final scene? I smiled, really smiled. No, just the credits. And for the first time in months, I exhaled fully. The kind of breath you only take when the weight is finally off your chest. Some endings don't slam shut, they fold. Quietly, precisely. By spring, the hydrangeas had bloomed again, full and unapologetic. The backyard smelled of earth and lemon balm, and Liam had learned the difference between basil and mint without needing the labels. I taught him how to measure compost, how to pull weeds without damaging the roots. He liked the ritual of it. He liked knowing what to water and when. Evan filed for divorce the first week of April. Quietly. No fanfare. Just a clean, official goodbye. Kelly didn't contest it. She'd moved 2 towns over by then. Something about a branding rebrand, which sounded about as hollow as it felt. Rumor had it her credit was in freefall. The boutique she opened last minute folded before the paint dried. The landlord sued her for unpaid rent. Her network of lifestyle influencers had gone ghost. Ruth brought the news with a printed screenshot and a smirk. She's gone, she said, sipping her tea like it was champagne. Out of town, out of style, out of options. I didn't gloat. I just poured her another cup. She burned herself, Ruth said. You just handed her the matches. I shook my head. No. I folded her neatly and put her away. That made her laugh. A real, unfiltered laugh that made the wind pause for a second. We sat like that for a while. Just us. No tension, no unfinished business between the walls. That's when I realized I hadn't been this still in years. Not since before Henry got sick. Not since the silence in this house started sounding like surrender instead of rest. Now it was just quiet. The good kind. Liam helped me build a raised garden bed by the side fence, cucumbers mostly. We labeled each section with wooden spoons. I gave him a small green notebook to track the growth, and he titled it Liam's Ledger. On the first page, he wrote, Day 1. The dirt is weird but kind of nice. I like how worms don't care what happened before. Evan had started taking evening classes, finance, and ethics. He said he wanted to work in nonprofit someday. Maybe teach. He still apologized too often, but he'd stopped flinching at his own reflection. One night, he handed me a printed draft. It's not much, he said. Just something for the custody mediator. I read the first page. The word accountability showed up 3 times before the second paragraph. He was learning. The kitchen table had become my workspace again. Not for bills or baking, but writing. A habit Ruth encouraged after she caught me telling Liam one too many, back when I was married to your grandfather stories. You've got a voice, she said. Might as well use it before someone else tries to write it for you. So I started the memoir. The Price of Help, by Diane Miller. I didn't have a publishing deal. I didn't care. Some stories aren't written to be sold. They're written to be understood. I wrote about the towels, the keys, the wine glasses no one else ever washed. I wrote about Henry, the good years, the hard ones, the way grief settles in your bones like dust in old floorboards. I wrote about Kelly too, not as a villain, but as a mirror. And I wrote about the line between helping and disappearing, how easily it blurs when no one's watching. One night, Ruth stopped by with warm lemon muffins and a copy of Oh, the Oprah magazine. She slid it across the table. A small blurb on the bottom right corner read, Diane Miller's quiet reckoning in the price of help is a masterclass in grace, grit, and delayed triumph. Ruth raised an eyebrow. So, when's the book tour? I laughed, the kind that catches in your throat just a little. Let's see if I can finish chapter 10 first. Peace doesn't always arrive with trumpets. Sometimes it just smells like grilled corn and clean linen. 1 year later, the backyard was full again. Not chaotic, just full in that soft golden way only late summer knows how to deliver. The grill sizzled. Glasses clinked. Liam ran barefoot through the garden beds with a bubble wand, his laughter tripping up into the sky. Evan stood by the barbecue with a spatula in one hand and a craft beer in the other, smiling like it wasn't borrowed anymore. Ruth arrived late, as always, carrying a bouquet of dahlias wrapped in wax paper. These look too alive to leave at the florist, she said, pressing the flowers into my arms, like someone who finally remembered how to bloom. I thanked her and didn't say more. We didn't need to name what had already been unburied. The table was set for 8. Just enough for family and the family we chose. No name cards, no linen napkins. Just a paper table runner that Liam had decorated with green marker drawings of cucumbers and smiling worms. We sat after sundown, tiki torches flickering, plates full of potato salad and grilled peaches. Someone made a toast. I think it was Ruth. I can't remember the words. Only the feeling. Steady. Earned. Real. Later, Evan came and sat beside me, his hands scrubbed clean, his face caught in the soft quiet of someone who had nothing left to hide. He looked over at Liam, asleep now in a lawn chair, wrapped in a blanket with his shoelaces still untied. Mom, he said, voice low. Thank you for saving us. I didn't say anything for a second, just folded the towel in my lap. Crisp, warm from the basket. I didn't save you, I said eventually. I just did the laundry, son. Took out what didn't belong. He laughed. Not hard, but the kind that lasts. The kind that's been waiting. We toasted once more. Nothing dramatic. Just a gentle lift of glasses. To peace, to beginnings, to things that take their time. The party wound down like good music. One by one, the guests left. Ruth stayed behind to help wash dishes, but we both knew we'd end up talking on the porch instead. After she left, I walked through the house alone. Lights dimmed, furniture pushed back into place, shoes left by the door. The kind of mess that feels like life, not loss. In the laundry room, I opened the dryer and pulled out a small load. Kitchen towels, Liam's gardening shirt, a floral apron I hadn't worn in months. I folded everything slowly, the fabric soft against my fingers, still warm from the cycle. The last towel was bright white. No stains, no tears, just the plain quiet of a thing that had been used, cleaned, and made ready again. Sunlight from the porch spilled in through the slatted blinds and landed across my hands. I paused there. Because peace, I'd learned, doesn't show up with answers. It shows up with room. And sometimes that's enough. They say helping is a habit, that it's hard to break. Maybe they're right, because I still fold the towels, still cut the crusts off Liam's sandwiches, still leave a light on in the hallway just in case Evan forgets to. But I do it differently now. Not to be noticed, not to be needed, just because it feels right again. She once told me I liked helping, and she was right. I just learned who to help.